What is up, and welcome back to another episode of So There's That. I am your hostess, doing the mostest, Kivanshi, and we're here with a show that has my heart, guys. Brilliant Minds series premiere, pilot episode, season 1, episode 1. Oh my god. So I haven't watched doctor shows since season 6 of Grey's Anatomy, because after a while things just kind of got repetitive and I was no longer emotionally invested in any of the storylines that was popping up. And this just kind of goes across like all doctor shows. And it's crazy because as a kid I watched ER. I love doctor shows, ER, anything where they were like showing autopsies and like talking about like anatomy and different things. So I wanted to be a doctor. So I watched all of it. But then I watched Grey's Anatomy, and while it was interesting and also working in medical, some of it was very correct. It just, as a TV show, it got really old for me. And once I was no longer emotionally connecting to what I was seeing in front of me, I just decided to disengage altogether. And a lot of times when you work in the same field as the shows that you watch, you often dissect so many things because you know what happens in real life, and sometimes they don't portray that well on TV. So it was just a lot happening. But with the show, I've gotten to see a few episodes, and every single one is gripping. Like, it's so good. So I would describe this show out the gate as House and Grey's Anatomy's baby, but this baby has a lot of empathy, has a lot of grace, has a lot of patience, and so far doesn't have any of the backstabbing. So like in Grey's, it was a lot of, there can only be one who's the best, and then in House it was like one genius. But here there's a team of people that are very smart in whatever particular skill that they have. And the foundation of the things is trust and respect, because at the end of the day, we have to work together for the good of the patient, not for the good of ourselves. So already the integrity and the respect to the field and to patients in general drew me in right away. And so, yeah, I love the show. I love it. We haven't even gotten into it, and I love it so much. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so Brilliant Minds season 1, episode 1, pilot. That's the only name that I found for the episode. It's 42 minutes, and this is straight from NBC's website. It's inspired by the life and work of the world famous author and physician Oliver Sacks. It follows a revolutionary, larger-than-life neurologist and his team of interns as they explore the human mind while grappling their own relationships and mental health. The creator and the writer of the show is Michael gRassi. The director of this episode was Toland Krieger. The cinematographer was Pierre Gill. I put a D on the end. Pierre Gill. And the cast, it's a pretty decent ensemble cast. It's led by Zachary Quinto, who plays Dr. Oliver Wolf. And you may know Zachary as Dr. Spock. You may have met him as, I think he was Gabriel on Heroes. He was the guy in American Horror Story that was like in that suit. I think it was like season 1 or 2 of American Horror Story. Loved him. I just love him. But I don't know if he's gay in real life, but all the characters that I've seen, he has represented like queerness, and I just love, I don't know if that's him, but I just enjoy that this is always a part of the storyline, because he continues to get such dynamic roles, and he's not shying away from like the sexuality of that person while also not flaunting it in a way that makes the sexuality a part of a storyline. It just is, and it just exists. And I really love how he's navigated that within all of these roles. I don't know that about him in real life. This is a job. At the end of the day, it's his profession. But it sticks out to me, and I think it's very important for it to be represented in a way that is respectful to the gay community and not exploitative. All right. Also stars Tamberla Perry, who plays Dr. Carol Pierce, and you may know her from They Clone Tyrone. Ashleigh LaThrop, who plays Dr. Ericka Kinney, and she was in The Handmaid's Tale. You have Alex MacNicoll, who plays Dr. Van Markus, and he's known for The Society. Then we have Aury Krebs, who plays Dr. Dana Dong, and her IMDb, she was in a show called Maya, and she played the main character. But her IMDb was like Maya and then like a couple of other things, and now this. So fairly new to the industry, and I love that because we're starting to get away from recycling the same faces over and over and giving up and coming artists a chance in like shows that could potentially be critically acclaimed. We have Spence Moore II, who plays Dr. Jacob Nash, and you may have seen him recently in Creed 3. And we have Teddy Sears, who plays Dr. Josh Nichols, who he also was in American Horror Story. I didn't have enough time to look this up, but I was wondering, I was like, was he Zachary Quinto's partner in one of them seasons? I can't remember, but like the Halloween season, there was like this gay couple or whatever. That would be cool if they're back on the same show together, but I digress. And then we have the Donna Murphy. And Donna Murphy is more recently known for The Gilded Age. Whew! I need a water break. That was a lot of words. Words. So we opened up the show with Dr. Oliver Wolf, and once I say the person's name, I'm then going to refer to them by their first name. So Dr. Oliver Wolf is in the hospital, and he's doing a voiceover, and he's just kind of talking about, you know, there's all these rules and things of that nature on how to take care of a patient and make it seem like there's only one way to do things, but sometimes you have to break the rules. So he goes in and he kidnaps an Alzheimer's patient off the ward, and the people are trying to stop him, but he's just like, I have something to do. So he puts this old, at least 90 Alzheimer's patient on the back of his motorcycle, y'all, and he's pulling up to this event, and turns out it's a wedding for the patient's granddaughter. So he walks in and he's doing everything, and her parents confront him, and they're like, what are you doing? Why is my dad out of the hospital? Like, you're gonna upset my daughter. You better not ruin her wedding. Like, this is crazy. He can't even remember anything. And Oliver's just like, hush, 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 hush. I promise you, I'm not gonna ruin anything. I just need to show you. So he walks him over to the piano, and he starts to play like a couple of notes. Oliver does. He starts to play a couple of notes. So he asked the patient, he was like, how was that? Like, was that like how you remember it? And he was like, it's nice, but I wouldn't play it like that. And Dr. Oliver laughs, and he's like, okay, well, how would you do it? And the grandfather begins to play the piano. He begins to sing, and it's a song that I'm gonna assume that he used to perform back in the day. And so he's singing, and everybody's turning around to watch, but more importantly, the granddaughter recognized his voice, and she walks through the crowd, and Oliver signals to the band to join in, and they know the song, so they're singing and they're doing everything. And they don't say this, but I think it was a song that he used to play for his granddaughter. And so he finishes and everybody claps. The parents are like, how is this even possible? And Oliver tells them he may not remember many things, and his Alzheimer's is progressive, but music connects him to his memories and allows him to remember when and where this song was played or what memories were tied to it. And the granddaughter, Sophie, walks up and she says, Granddad, and he looks to her and he says her name, and they just start bawling and they're hugging, and I'm bawling because I'm just like, why would you do this to me at the beginning of an episode? This is so heartwarming. It was so good. But he also stole a patient from the hospital, and that's against the rules. So when he got back, they were just like, listen, we know that you care a lot, but like, a patient is a patient, like, it is what it is. And he was just like, no, I need to change like the world's views on how they view patients. They're not just a number. They're not somebody to just sit in a bed and wither away. We're saying that these people only have certain moments to live, and you're not allowing them to live in the moments of lucidity that they have. So I'm going to do whatever I can for my patients because they are people. And they're like, that's so moving. You're fired. Ciao. So he out of a job. So he's at home, and Dr. Carol Pierce, a friend of 20 years, they went to school together, they went to med school together and everything like that. So she shows up to his house and she was like, hey, so the neuro attending position just came open, and I know you're having trouble getting hired at other places, so we have a job for you. And he's like, no, you know why I can't go work there, like, it is what it is. And she's like, well, yeah, I know, but nobody's exactly beating down your door to give you a job, and you're way too smart to just be at home like jobless. Like, the medical community needs you. So he lifted his little weights and he's just like, I'm not doing it. I'm not going there of all places. Like, girl, why would you even approach me like that? And she was like, that's too bad, because we have this patient who had brain surgery to cure her of her epilepsy, and the epilepsy is gone, but now she doesn't recognize her kids. And he was like, oh, tell me more. And she said, I'm sorry, doctor-patient confidentiality. And she dangles this intellectual carrot in front of him. And so he's thinking about it, and he goes and jumps into the Hudson River because it helps him think. Currents, I don't know, I guess he's been doing this for a really long time. And he then has a flashback. So he goes back to his childhood, and we're kind of getting like a very speedy flashback of glimpses of his father and his mother and him in different weird scenarios, so where you, the viewer, understand that the father suffer from some type of mental condition or something. And so we kind of go through this rapidly and really fast in his thoughts while he's in the water, and he gets out and he decides, okay, cool, I'm gonna take the job. He goes to the hospital, stank, and Carol was like, did you jump into the Hudson right before coming here? And he's like, yeah, it helps me think. And she's like, okay, well, go ahead and take a shower before you go and see the patient, but real quick, let me just give you an orientation, walk you around. This is where your office is gonna be, and the chief medical officer would like to see you. And he was like, that's gonna have to wait. So he's in the locker room and he's showering, and the interns are there, and that's where we meet, I don't remember their names off the top of my head. We meet Dana, Jacob, I'm lying, yes, Dana, Jacob, Van, and Ericka. Are there 4 of them? Yeah, there's 4 of them. I don't know, I got confused temporarily. It's midnight, so excuse me. So we meet them, and Dana has like read up on him, and Ericka has read up on him too, and they all kind of like, Dana and Ericka, especially Ericka, is like very, very, very fond of him and fond of his work. Ericka basically is just like, I want to be like him. Like, the way that he is, I want to study him. He cares so much. And Jacob, yes, Jacob was like, I heard he a dick, this, that, and the third. And everybody looks up and they turn around, and Oliver's standing right there. And he's like, what's that? And before we can really get into it, there's this loud screaming and loud commotion in the hallway. So the interns are running out and he's hurrying up, putting back on some clothes. And he goes out and he sees these nurses dragging this patient down the hall. So he runs up and he's like, hey, let her go. Like, this is my patient. You know, this, that, and the third. And the woman is the epileptic patient that Carol was telling him about at his house. And he's like, what's wrong? And she was like, the nurses was like, she keeps saying like to bring her kids, bring her kids. And he said, okay, where her kids at? And the nurses was like, they're standing right there. And the patient was like, those are not my kids. I don't know who they are. Get them the hell away from me. And you need to find my kids. So now he's like confused. So he's like, okay. So he has the nurses take the boys away while he gets her calm and gets her back into the hospital bed. So we find out the patient's name is Hannah. Carol and Oliver are in the radiology room and they're looking at her brain scans. Now, Carol is the chief of psychiatry, and the psychiatry ward and the neurological ward are on the same floor, and they're colleagues anyway. And when you go through medical school, you go through like different rounds and stuff like that. So she's not unknowledgeable of neurology to a certain degree. And so they're both in there and they're looking at everything, and she's also studying it from a psychosis standpoint too. And so we're finding out that something happened. So whenever the thing that was removed from her brain to stop her life-threatening epilepsy, something happened in there where she is now experiencing some form of face blindness or prosopagnosia. So just a quick education. Prosopagnosia, otherwise known as face blindness, is when you struggle to recognize faces or can't interpret facial expressions and cues. I first came across this during a 911 episode last season where this lady fell in her garden, hit her head, but she didn't go to the hospital, and she told her son that she was fine. He went out to go get her some medicine and stuff like that, some ice packs, and when he came back, she called the cops and said that there was an intruder in her house and she's shot. And so they take her to the hospital, they're doing all these other things, and I forget how they actually figured it. Oh, no. So they saw the intruder who was shot dead, but then Athena saw the picture on the nightstand and saw that it was a lady's son. And so they're like, why would she kill her son? And so they're listening to the 911 tape and they're like, she really don't recognize this person. And I think Hen was the one who was like, I think it's prosopagnosia. Like, see if she had a recent head injury or trauma or something like that. And so Athena brought her the picture and she was like, oh, who is this? And she was like, it's my son. You know, I was waiting for him to come home. He always comes home at this time, blah, 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 blah. And they had to break it to her like she killed her son. She could not recognize him to the face, like to his face. And so to see it come up again in a show, I'm intrigued. I really want to do some nerd deep diving on this. So that's what she's suffering from. While they're looking at this, Dr. Nichols walk in and he's like, what y'all doing with my patient? And he's like, Oliver's like, well, we're just trying to figure out like what went wrong. And he's trying to be like PC about it. And Dr. Nichols gets hella offended. Like, what you trying to say? Like, I can't do my job. This lady is just crazy. She's delusional. I was here to fix her brain. I wasn't here to make her a good mom and all types of other stuff. And it's just very... This reaction is why patients complain. It's why patients feel that they are not heard, and why they feel that they're not being given the care that they could because of this type of thing. I fix this, so it's good, but you're not thinking about the second, third order effects of what your procedure could have done. You always have to consider the risk, and the fact that he didn't go back on his own to figure it out, and Carol had to go recruit Oliver to come in to try to figure it out says a lot about his ego, and at this point says a lot about how he treats his patient. Oliver says he wants to try something by going to Hannah's house and observing her, and Carol makes him take the interns. He don't want to because he like working by himself, and she tells him, look, if you're just honest with them about your face blindness, it might make everything okay. And so now we know there's a connection between him and this case. And for him, he tries not to tell anybody because he prefers working alone so that he doesn't have to explain why he is the way that he is. And Carol's like, look, we all got problems, some way, shape, or form. It'll be okay. So he's like, drop it. We're gonna go to Hannah's house. I'll see. Like, we'll see. So they go to Hannah's house, and the boys are in the living room and they're playing. She's in the kitchen, she looks like she's getting ready to make dinner or something. And so he asks her, you know, what do you see when you see them? And it cuts to cinematography. I love not just the way that they do the flashbacks, but showing like how she sees her sons in this. They look like evil, distorted versions of the boys themselves. And so throughout the episode, you get to go through the lens and do like a POV of certain characters. And I think that's really cool because Oliver cares so much about his patients, and his brilliance comes from the immersive experience of putting himself in the patient's shoes. So it makes sense that visually the audience is going to be put into the patient's shoes as well. So he asks her, you know, well, describe features of your kids to me. And she goes from looking at these strangers full of hate and fear to talking about the sons that she remembers in her mind. And so he's like, okay, my homework for you tonight is to think about those features as you interact with your sons. She said, okay, I'll try. Everything went bad real fast. He gets a phone call in the middle of the night. He's going back to the house. It's raining outside. The boys are yelling to go back into the house. They're screaming for their mom, and a caseworker is taking them away. So he's like, what is going on? And she was like, a neighbor called and said that there was yelling and screaming, and then she locked the boys out of the house, and she's refusing to let them back in. So at this point, it's child endangerment, and in the morning we're going to try to get in touch with their father because these kids cannot be there with her anymore. So Oliver is like panicky. He's thinking really, really fast, but there's really nothing that they can do right now in this moment. So the next day, the caseworker, Oliver, and Carol are in Carol's office, and they're going over everything and they're talking about it. And Oliver tells the caseworker, like, would you take people's kids away if their mom had a broken leg? And she's like, this is not the same. He's like, why isn't it? She wasn't like this before she had surgery to stop her seizures. And now she had the surgery. She doesn't have seizures, but now she doesn't recognize her kids. Her brain is broken. It's bruised. Allow me the time and the opportunity to figure out how to reset it so that she can get her kids back. And the caseworker was like, look, I don't know what you're gonna do, but I'm getting in touch with their father. So you have limited time to figure out how you're gonna fix this. But I'm not sending them back to their mother because they're in danger. She does not know them. There's no feelings towards them. And I mean, she's right. Like, what can you do, you know? So Oliver's walking out with Carol. There's so many people in the cast. I have to like keep thinking of their names. So he's walking out with Carol to go see the boys, and she's like, hey, Chief of Medicine is trying to talk to you. Like, you need to do your intake interview. And he's like, listen, I'm in the throes of this. I don't have time. I'll get to it. And he goes and sees the boys, and they're asking him, you know, like, will you be able to fix my mom? And I love this moment so much because a lot of times doctors will make, not a lot of times, but sometimes when you have an emotionally attached physician, they will make false promises or promises of things that they can't 100% deliver on because the human body is going to have to respond. So I can say, hey, if I do this procedure on you, you're going to be 100% okay. But if I don't know any pre-existing conditions, or if something got nicked during the procedure, or you develop an infection or something like that, I can't say those things. There are a bunch of unknowns. And so he is a patient, he is a doctor who from the outside looking in gets way too close. But from the inside looking in, he's getting close to figure out how the patient has the disease and the relationship between the patient and the disease, to the point where he's like gathering data. So while he leads emotionally, once he's in with the patient, he's gathering data, he's gathering information, and he tells the boys, I don't know if I will be able to fix your mom. I have no idea. But what I can tell you is that I'm going to do everything to try. And that's all I can do. And so somebody with face blindness, who for him, it comes off as being rude. He doesn't recognize faces inside of in a crowd or anything like that. If he just meets you in passing, he's never going to remember you. So he'll walk by you multiple times and won't say anything. Not because he's rude, but because he cannot remember you, and he hasn't been with you long enough to find distinct characteristics to hold on to in order to remember you. And so somebody who's going through life kind of seeming like an asshole, when he's in these moments with those patients, his heart shines. And it's so glorious. So we go into another flashback, and at this moment, I realize that the flashbacks, especially because this case is very similar to him. She has a similar condition to him. So it's causing him to go back into his own memories and confront some things that maybe he suppressed for a very long time. So going back to the synopsis of the show, you have these brilliant doctors while they're tackling their own relationships to others and their own mental health. And it's being right now confronted in a way that is very respectful of mental health conditions. But what's cool is when he goes back to that moment that he gets lost in, he finds answers from his past and is able to connect it to what's going on today. And I think that's really cool that we kind of get to see what that is, because at the end of the day, all we do is draw on our experiences. We can't draw from things that has not happened to us at all. But he uses his own personal life and his own upbringing and different lessons that his mom said back then or that his dad said back then, and it triggers him to be able to try something today. And I thought that's a really nice touch for the TV show. So Dr. Oliver has an idea to take Hannah back to her childhood home. And he's driving, he's talking about the boys, and she's telling him about her kids and all these different memories and all these different moments and everything like that. And then they pull up to her old house, and he was like, do you recognize this? She was like, yeah, it's my childhood home, but it's not. And he was like, what does it look like? Does it look like a TV set? And so we go from his view of looking at a regular house and then insert her view, and you see like set lights and stuff like that where it looks fake. And she says, yeah. And so she's like, what are you doing? Are you playing a trick on me? Like, what the hell is going on? He was like, no, this just answered a lot of questions. And he was like, what do you feel when you go to this new house that you live in? And she's like, it's a house. So it dawns on him that whatever happened during her surgery, it's affected all of her old memories prior to the surgery. And the house that she moved in now was like a new memory post surgery. And so this is also impacting her kids. She had her kids before she had surgery. So obviously the kids are in this thing that she does not recognize. So she can only recognize new things and form new memories from what her eyes are connecting to her brain at this moment. So now we're getting some answers. So he goes back to the hospital with her, and they're in this house observance room. I don't know, it's really comfortable. It looks like a huge living room area, and they have Hannah hooked up, and he has the TV on. It's a home video, and they have her hooked up to these brain waves to monitor brain activities. So he's showing Carol and the rest of the interns like what's going on. So he has her watching home videos of her boys, and she's just sitting there like a zombie. Brain waves, flat, nothing. So he's like, okay, now I'm gonna try something. He turns the TV around, and as soon as she's hearing them, her brain activity starts spiking. And she starts crying, and she's identifying her boys by name and all these other things. And she's like, you know, where are they? And in this moment of heightened emotional stress, she has a seizure. So now they're like, oh shit. So she's in the hospital, and here come Dr. Nichols. What did you do to my patient? Blah, 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 blah. I fixed her. I cured her. She didn't have any seizures until you came along, and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, so yeah, we're working on some things, and I'm trying to fix the problem you messed up. And here he goes again, huffing and puffing, talking about, I know how to do my job, all types of other stuff. I can't help that she went and got her kids taken away from her. She's crazy. All types of things. Just very, very the antithesis of Dr. Oliver Wolf. Like, it's insane. So he goes and he storms off. And Oliver goes back and, you know, he tells the team, like, look, let's just take a break for the day. We will resume at another time. So the interns go, and they go home, get them some rest, and Oliver jumps back into the Hudson River. I love the quirks that he has. And Zachary Quinto just plays awkward, but like handsome so well. He just plays like that awkward kid that sits at the lunch table, but he's fine, and you just have to like get to know him. You don't want to change him because it's the awkwardness that attracts you to him. He does that so well. Shout out to you, sir. And he runs back into the hospital, and he goes to look for the patient, and they're like, she checked herself out. So he hops on his motorcycle, and he's zooming all up and through traffic. And we see that she is looking like she wants to drive over a cliff. But right before she goes over it, he cuts her off in front of her, and she slams on her brakes. So he gets in the car, and, you know, she's like, how did you find me? He's like, you told me about your kids. You told me that this is a place that y'all used to go. I listened to you, and now I'm here. Please give me the opportunity to help you. I think I can find a way to fix this. And so she's crying, but she trusts him. And just a car ride to her family home just earlier, he learned so much about her. He knew more about her than whomever was working with her prior to this thing happening to her. That just shows the level of empathy that he's able to have and to create with his patients. So we're at the hospital, and he has all the interns, Carol, and the caseworker in this house. And so the caseworker's like, what are we doing? I'm not about to bring them kids up in here. She's not about to traumatize them, blah, blah. He's like, come out there. Okay. So he puts a blindfold on her, and he says, bring in the kids. The caseworker brings the kids in, and the oldest starts to speak, and she starts bawling and she calls him by name. Then the other one speaks, she calls him by name and she calls them over and they're hugging and they're crying and then this and the third. Everybody in the room is like, what in the hell? And so this is the part of TV shows like CSI and like SVU, like cop, they do it a lot in cop shows, in CIS and stuff like that. This is where we get our education piece. So this, I love this. Okay, so let me see. I wrote it down. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, so the problem is that, and this is how he describes it, and then I'm paraphrasing it. Her memories are home. So it's home base. Okay. Her eyes used to be the road and the pathway to getting home. What she saw, where she went, what she recognized, translated to emotional responses in her. After getting her surgery during epilepsy, oh, mind you, Dr. Nichols is in here too. So he's getting educated as well. So from her eyes to home, that's what used to happen. But now there's a giant gap in this road, and from her eyes to home, she can't get there anymore. So now every time she sees something from a past or anything that was pre-surgery, in her brain, she's coming up to a gap in the road, and all there is this abyss that she sees in front of her. She cannot see home anymore. She cannot see the pathway to home. But the thing is, other parts of her brain still remembers how to get there. Much like construction work on a road, they put up signs for a detour. And so Oliver's job is to help her detour her mind back to home, which goes into her auditory areas. She can still hear them and recognize who they are. And so now they have to work to get her to turn away from her eyes and go to her ears in order to find her way back home. What a genius. I have to read about the real doctor in real life, because this is a level of empathy and passion that is lacking so much in the world. You don't even have to be a doctor just to care this much about people, to care this much about the people that you interact with daily, the homeless on the street, the child, the elderly, another person your age, like just helping people out. Like this is why I got so emotional, because it's like humanity in a show, humanity in a doctor, and it's just so pure and beautiful. I love it. So the caseworker's like, that is amazing, but she can't go through life blindfolded. Like, what are we doing? Like, the dad should be here in an hour. Like, if we cannot figure this out, I have to give them up to their father. And he's like, lady, ma'am, miss, please, I'm begging you, work with us, with our team, to help her figure out a new way to live with these kids. Don't work against me. Work with me. If the goal is the safety of the children, and you just saw that she loves her kids and they love her, then have compassion. Join us so we can figure out a way. So what they ended up doing was a plan. There's a way that she has to kind of start her day and move throughout her day. And one is calling her boys in the morning to wake them up. So before she ever sees them, she calls them to establish an emotional connection to them. She's hearing them, she knows they're there, she knows they're safe, and it makes her feel good. They also gave her some glasses that alters her vision enough to where her brain now has to focus on her other senses in order to recognize the things that surround her. So it's not that she can't see through the glasses. She knows how to drive, she knows how to do those things, but it's just slightly off kilter, so that when she sees her sons, she's not seeing them clear enough to see them as imposters. And because she's already established an emotional connection through hearing them first thing in the morning, now as they continue to talk to her throughout the day, she knows that she's talking to her kids. And then the third thing is to be honest with herself, to explain her condition to her children, her friends, her family, the teachers, and everything like that, and basically to not have shame surrounded in this. It's something that's unfortunate. Like, she won't have seizures anymore, but this other complication happened. But we're working to minimize the effects and the impacts of this complication, and by doing that, you have to acknowledge it. And so with that, he's telling his interns that he has face blindness, and he's telling them about the different ways in which he tries to remember people and things that he's grabbing on. So he's teaching them how he learns people, and it's really establishing like this area of trust. There's no hierarchy in this, and it was just pure rawness and pure vulnerability, and you can see the interns receiving this. And there's kind of like where when they first were talking about him, he was like this god tier doctor. They're now seeing him as a peer, a regular human being who suffers from things just like the rest of the world, but it's going to be okay, because even with his condition, he's still a freaking rock star, and it didn't hold him back. So he's in his office, and Dr. Carol comes in, and she brings him a fern because he loves plants, and I love plants too. And she's like, good job. And he's like, you knew this case would trigger me. And she was like, I knew that you had the skills to figure it out. And she told him, your face blindness is not a curse, it's a gift. You having face blindness, it forces you, because you have to look deeper, to seek deeper things, and to really pay attention. And you pay attention and you seek in ways that the average person does not. We use our eyes to see, and then we judge immediately. But everything is fuzzy for you. Everything is blurry for you. And so you have to stop, and you have to focus, and you have to dig. And that is a gift. And you shouldn't run away from it. I love you. I want you to have a good night. But before you have the good night, I'm tired of the chief medical officer bugging me about you coming to do your interview. So get your ass up. Take your win and go see the chief medical officer. So he rolling his eyes or whatever. He don't like rules. And he's walking in, and he goes into the office, and chief medical officer, she says, thank you for making time to see me throughout your busy day. And he says, hi, Mom. So there's that. Brilliant Minds, season 1, episode 1, pilot episode. That was damn near a full recap. What can I say? I already said the things at the beginning, and I'm excited for this show. This show has the potential to be the next Law and Order in longevity. There's always somebody needing to be saved. There's so many different neurological disorders and injuries, trauma, and stuff like that to the brain that manifest in other things as well. So there's an opportunity to have collaboration between different specialties and things of that nature. We already saw psychiatry a little bit with Dr. Carol, trying to figure out the psychosis of this patient specifically, and him working together as well. And then he also has interns, and so with interns you kind of go through different things and different areas to figure out where do you want to specialize as well. So in medicine there's just so much to do, and I think the show will have long life if they stay authentic, which I'm sure they will. It's based off of a real person. If they stay authentic to putting the patient's needs above their own. Now, I like a little mess. I like a little drama. I like a little relationship. You know what I mean? Because that happens in real life. Like when you're working together constantly, things happen. You're literally at work more than you're at home. And I'm not talking about like y'all hooking up, but just dynamics, a little bit of cabin fever. You're around people too long. It creates drama. You might have rifts in between friendships. So many things happen. But one thing that, like, I'm not gonna compare it, never mind. So if they just stay true to that and not try to like be like other shows, then I think they will be good. And right now I feel like, while I feel like beats of different shows, this is its own child. It has its own personality, it has its own thoughts and everything like that. And I look forward to more. So my review, obviously 10 out of 10, like no notes whatsoever. The actors have really good chemistry with each other. There's respect. I'm definitely seeing a lot more like respect and trust on all the different shows that I watch. Like it just comes off naturally in the characters. And with ensemble shows, your lead kind of sets the tone for that. So it's definitely a testament to Zachary, Quinto, as well as Tamberla as well, because I don't know if she's listed as like a co-lead, but she's definitely like up there in supporting actresses, if not a co-lead. And the energy and the synergy and the trust and the respect that you put behind the scenes, and when you're practicing lines and when you're going over the characters and what's your character's backstory and what's my character's backstory, how did you read that line and how did I read that line, and then going into the room and allowing your emotions to just take over and allowing yourself to just hear what the other person is saying instead of focusing on your lines to get out, you really get a lot of heartfelt emotional beats. And just in a pilot episode alone, you're just on the verge of tears from the moment the show starts, like right at the beginning. And I haven't had a show that made me cry in a long time. This Is Us made me cry every episode. It didn't even matter. Happy tears, sad tears, angst. I cried all the time. And so I'm looking forward to crying every week with brilliant minds. And with that, I'm gonna wrap up this episode. If you liked it, go ahead and hit that thumbs up, share, hit the notification bell, comment in the comment box below. You can follow me on Spotify as well as Apple Podcasts, and you can also find me on Instagram at So There's That Podcast. And if you want to get more of my thoughts and a lot of live tweeting that I do outside of these reviews, you can find me on Twitter at Kivanchi. It is late and I'm about to go to bed. Bye.